Good evening. Welcome to a regular planning board meeting, March 13th. We're called the roll call, please.
Acting Chairman McNamara,
Present.
Mr. Prince, Mr. Goldenberg,
Present.
Chairman Curry, Ms. Garbino,
Here.
and Ms. Gannon.
Here.
Okay, as you can see, there are only 4 members. Mr. Curry and Mr. Prince are not with us this evening. Mr. Curry did ask me to pinch hit for him, and I will try to do my best. Because there are only 4 members tonight, our membership, our voting majority rules require that any action by this board be unanimous this evening. Okay, with that said, let's move to the items. First item on the agenda is to look at the September 26th minutes. There were 2 revisions. The original minutes did not include mention of a site walk for the North County homes on page 2, and the addition of the Gary Ann Mitchell 4-lot conservation subdivision time extension. The adjustments to the minutes reflect that reality. Although I was not at that meeting, I am going to vote with the board this evening to approve these changes. Are there any other changes to those minutes?
None, but I would like to comment that under the rules, you do not have to be present at the meeting. I know, I'm just backing you up. That you only have to read them to approve them. You don't have to attend the meeting.
Is there a motion to approve them as amended?
So moved.
So moved.
Second?
Aye.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. Next, meeting of December. Our minutes have been distributed to each member. Are there any comments or suggestions, changes to those minutes?
No.
Minutes of December 12th, 2018. If there's no changes, may I have a motion for approval?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Unanimous. And finally, our minutes of January 9th. Again, copies have been distributed to all members. If there's no changes or amendments, I'll move for the approval.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, unanimous. Thank you very much. Okay. Next is Zennia Stevens conditional final subdivision is a request for a 90-day extension for the conditional site plan approval, stormwater management, erosion control, and sediment control permits from March 11th of this year to and including June 10th, in accordance with town law, section 276. Any discussion? I noticed we have recommendations from staff to proceed. Any concerns?
No concern.
No.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. Next, Merritt Park Estates. There are some issues that have surfaced that we're going to hear again. Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you, Geraldine Tortorella of Hockerman, Tortorella, and Wexstein. We're counsel for Mancini Building. John and Rick Mancini are here this evening as well. They're the developers on the Merritt Park subdivision. We originally submitted a letter to you in mid-February requesting an additional 90-day extension from, I think it's March 4th to June 3rd, 2019. We have been working very diligently in trying to wrap up the last few open items in order to be able to file the plat, and we're prepared to file the plat. We went through the process of checking off everything to make sure everything was on the plat, and we've come to the realization that there were 2 items that were not included on the final plat in revision form, which would need to be added in order to dot every I and cross every T of the resolution. Normally, when that happens, we would simply have the surveyor add that information to the plat and then resubmit the plat to the health department. It would confirm that it did not have any effect on its approval, and it would re-sign the plat, and we'd present it for signature. The problem that we've had, and this has happened to a lot of our clients, is the original surveyor whose plat you approved has died. And the files of that surveyor were not acquired by anyone else, so there's no successor to take over that work. In addition, the health department has taken the position with us that it feels it has signed the plat enough times. And if it's going to re-sign the plat because information is added, it wants us to do a new plat. So we are finding ourselves in a situation where we don't have a surveyor to add information, and we've got a health department that has said to us that it won't re-sign the very plat that it has already signed. It simply wants us to create a new Mylar, which is not such an easy thing to do because we don't have the surveyor to print a new Mylar. And a new surveyor would actually have to go out and finish the work in order to be able to create the new Mylar. So I spoke with, I tried to reach Mr. Ariel, and I was not able to reach him, but I did speak with the town attorney, Mr. Baroni, about this, and I proposed that maybe we could deal with the two outstanding items, which are a recitation that there's no further subdivision allowed of the lots, and the second is to actually identify the new tax lot numbers on each of the lots. I proposed to him that, and requested that the town consider whether we could achieve those same objectives by incorporating that information in a declaration of restrictions or covenants against all of the properties, so that that same information would get into the chain of title for those parcels, much like it would if it were on a filed plat, but we wouldn't be constrained by the fact that we don't have a surveyor to add the information and we don't have the cooperation of the health department to sign it. If time were on our side, we would be able to spend the extra effort and expense to have a new plat prepared, but we actually have a buyer for the house that was constructed, and we'd like to be able to deliver that to the buyer in a timely manner. So we're working with all of these different competing considerations. So I spoke with Mr. Baroni. He indicated that he didn't have an objection to it because he thought it achieved the same purpose of making sure that the restriction on no further subdivision and the tax identification numbers would be in the chain of title. But he asked that we actually raise it with the board to make sure that the board didn't have any concern about it. And just as a courtesy to make sure that we would discuss it with you, since it would be achieving a point in your 2 points in your resolution in a manner that you were not typically accustomed to.
I know that this application's been around for a long time. The developer has gone out of his way with us repeatedly. For one, I want to protect the developer, but I also want to protect the future homeowner. So if what you're describing accomplishes that, I'm all for it.
I agree. It does protect the future homeowner.
Yes, it does. I mean, it's not a protection. I guess I don't think about it in terms of protection. It puts everyone on notice, including the future homeowner, that the restriction applies.
Goes with the title.
That's correct, and that the tax ID number is what it is.
Right.
Yes, it does.
It's clear title
That's
after we do this,
Ye-
or you do this.
Yes.
I think as long as the town council thinks it's a sufficient way to memorialize the fact that there'll be no further subdivision and to memorialize the attachment of the tax ID number to the parcel, I have no objection whatsoever.
Motion then to approve a 14th 90-day extension.
Second?
Comment?
Let me?
Any comments?
I'm
All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous.
Okay, and just so it's clear, can we have an affirmative statement that it's okay to go ahead with the declaration in lieu of putting those legends on the filed map?
Oh, it's fine.
Yeah, I can just state, so your approval should be with the condition that an easement map for water and sewer systems have a note that there will be no further subdivision, and will identify the tax ID numbers for lots, and that a declaration of covenants and restrictions be drafted and included with the above two restrictions.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't flip the page. I missed that part.
So those should be
So that's not
included
a
in your
motion
motion
to
of motion of
That-
approval.
That should be included in the motion that I just made, yes.
As a minute.
So
As amended.
as amended,
As
yes,
amended.
I vote for that as amended.
All in favor?
Aye,
Unanimous.
Thank you very much for your cooperation.
thank you.
And I don't expect we will be back unless we have a problem, but hopefully we will get this map filed in the very near future. Thanks very much.
Thank
See you
you,
at
thank
the
you for the
closing.
details.
See you next month.
Next item, Gary and Ann Mitchell, All Act Conservation Subdivision Regrant. Request a 90-day time extension of conditional final subdivision approval, steep slope, tree preservation, stormwater management, and erosion control and sediment control permits on March 20th of this year to and including June 17th, in accordance with Town Law Section 276. Good evening, Council. Any discussion or concerns on this one? Council, staff has recommended receipt.
So you gonna make a recommendation, a motion?
Call for a motion. I'll make the motion.
Yeah, and I'll second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. Next, Tamarack and Vine, final subdivision regrant. Looking for a 90-day time extension for the conditional final subdivision approval and steep slope tree preservation, stormwater management and control, and erosion sediment control permits from March 10th of this year to and including June 7th, in accordance with Town Law Section 276.
We have
Again,
no
same as before.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. Okay, now we're gonna get to interesting topics.
Yes.
Route 6, Carl's Seafood Restaurant. This applicant, first of all, what I want to do is acknowledge receipt. Let me get to section 5 here. Acknowledge receipt of the resolution of the town board dated yesterday. Authorize the applicant of this to appear before the planning board to remedy the stop work order issued pursuant to chapter 67, etc. I'll let you tell us what happened and what's going on,
Okay,
and why we're getting some late submissions.
Well, let's,
My name is Kevin Descharnes. I'm acting as the owner's agent for this project and also the tenant. So basically, they started a renovation of the existing restaurant, and they tried to build a small terrace off the side and enclose this back area, and they got the stop work order. So
That was in October,
yes, actually it was
August.
earlier, and then they
August.
issued a second one, but there was actually no work, and I think that they dismissed it.
Excuse me, Kevin?
Yeah.
Can you clarify something? You said you're the tenant?
No, I'm right.
For
I'm
the
owner's
tenant.
agent.
Oh, for the tenant. I was
Yes.
going to say, because
No, no.
then I was going to say, if you're the tenant, who's they?
No.
Okay,
For-
thank you.
No. So so basically what they would like to do is add a small eating terrace off the end of the building. It's 12 feet by 30 feet. It's the reason they were stopped also is that there's an existing concrete ramp and sidewalk to the building. They were increasing it by 18 inches, and then so that there was a more generous access for wheelchairs onto this terrace, and then the terrace itself. So that was the reason for the stop work order. So the other thing that we needed to go in front of the planning board for was the parking. We'd like to increase to 28 parking spots. I think in the application, we said we're adding 10, but I think if you read the table, I think we're actually only adding, I think we were approved at one point for 22. So it might be less than 10, but 28 is the final number. Then I guess that's the crux of it. I mean, I have the before and after elevations that got requested. This is the before, this is the after of the front elevation
I
facing
saw the
Route
windows
6.
going in.
I'm sorry?
I saw the
Yeah.
windows
Yep.
going in.
And then on the old front, this front entrance on the east side, this was the before, this is the after. This is the area with the flat roof that they wanted to enclose. In the back, there was these 2 staircases that would be interior now with this little flat roof bump out, which is flush with this. And then in the, this is the end that they wanted to add the terrace. This is the terrace itself with the railing. And this is the 18 inches that they wanted to extend that existing ramp/sidewalk.
Okay, I'm gonna ask a $64 question.
Sure.
Why weren't these plans before they started the activities?
They had an habitat engineer, he came and met with the 2 departments, and he really thought he understood the process, and he did. So I inherited the project and I'm trying to untangle it.
So the public understands, this is an existing old restaurant that's been up on Route 6, I don't know, so long as I can remember, 30 years or whatever. And changes were made to the site without proper, appearing before us properly before the changes were made. And you cannot appear before us under those circumstances, and so in order to do that, this gentleman appeared before the town board, and the town board is allowing it to proceed because it's being done correctly now.
Yes.
In good faith. I just wanted that
I
background to
appreciate
be
that
understood. We're not, I don't want people to think we're doing something wrong here.
I appreciate that.
And we look forward to having a nice restaurant again.
It would be nice.
I'd like to understand, you mentioned the number of parking spaces. How many parking spaces were feasible before? Estimate.
Well, it's interesting because there was, when I did some more digging, there was a previous plan that was, at one point, someone had put in 30-something parking spots and was forced to remove that, I think, in 2004. So the grading is all still there, they just took up the blacktop. So basically, let me show you on the site plan. So right now, this is the line of existing blacktop, and if, the original blacktop that someone had done without permission went all the way back to here, and that was all torn up already and removed. So right now, this is the line of blacktop. By giving them a generous parking lot, we were able to work out 28 spaces and go back not as far as the old parking lot used to.
Oh, there's a wetlands in this area. How does this configure, and what kind of surface is proposed?
Well, for the parking, it was proposed to be blacktop. The patio is impervious. There's dry laid pavers and stone dust for the patio area.
The little plan that we have doesn't have a key. The corners with the dots, what kind of surface is that?
That's just grass.
Grass, okay.
Yep. Sorry.
So on this, you've got now 22 spaces, 2 of which are handicap accessible.
Yeah.
Is that sufficient?
That's
Because we keep coming back to what it
28
was.
Should be 28 spaces.
It's going up to 22 here. 1, 2,
And on the other side.
oh, okay, on the other side, okay. I see, okay.
And the only entry to this site will be from Route 6.
Yes, correct.
And I see that there are 2 entries, and both of those entries are
Too late.
too late. Thank you.
Is that smart, or should it be one in and one out?
Has the state usually makes a
Yeah, I
determination.
would think the DOT would make that determination.
Yeah. So we don't really know yet.
So just a quick question, when I look at this, and maybe this is just a representative number, you have 24 tables, right, you show there. So what is the seating capacity, where the people who are employees, where are they gonna park? They're gonna park in the same lot as the people who are there?
Actually, I'm not sure the answer to that. I'm not sure what the tenant has in mind.
Okay,
I thought
maybe I missed that.
I thought the employee parking was only in the back. But I may be wrong. Along the back wall here. The employees should park there, not up in the front.
Between the 2 grass pieces, you mean?
Between the 2 grass, that should be for employee parking.
So we'll take a close look at that as we start getting more details. I think there's some bigger issues that we're dealing with. And then stormwater sizing, the wetlands separation, we've got to get some stormwater features in here. And I just made a note. We'll make sure we take a close look at that.
I guess I'm thinking in terms of increasing is there sufficient impervious surface to manage what they need?
Yeah.
Because it's gonna factor into that.
I'd like to mention a couple of things that I put in my memorandum. Obviously, they have to make adjustments to the plan, and you'll have to respond to the comments in the memorandum. But two of the things you've already brought up have to do with parking. I identified spot 28, which does not meet the requirements, so they're going to have to look at the configuration of that. I personally looked at the accessway with the double access to see if circulation could change on there. And because of the width of the lane in front, it actually does not serve well. It's not wide enough for 2 cars to go back and forth. So you can't really, if you're entering, I agree with the board that it would be better if there were 1 in and 1 out. But because of the width of that accessway, that 1 lane, there really is no opportunity for cross access. So if you come in one way and you don't find a spot there, what we don't want them to have to do is be forced to come out onto Route 6 again.
Yeah.
So in this way, actually the 2 ways appear to be the only way that this could significantly work. So, I mean, we can take another look at
Good
it,
point.
but I did take a look at this. And all the other things that need to be done, there's no zoning bulk table that tells us that this does or doesn't meet the requirements.
Right.
So all of these things will have to be done to formalize the site plan. What the acting chairman said tonight was at the beginning to ask sort of why did they get some late items. The reason you got those is because I had requested some changes in the EAF, and I need a revised EAF to send out, presuming you're going to do lead agency tonight. I need that corrected one to send along with the notice of intent to be lead agency. So that's why he has provided it. I asked him to make sure we got it by this meeting. So when I send everything out tomorrow, I have the revised form to send
I
out. So that's,
noticed the attached to it. But these,
and I asked him to provide those because I need to send those with the EAF.
So we have to declare.
So the next thing you have to do is to declare your intent to be lead agency.
if that's the next item, is there a motion to declare ourselves lead agency?
Should
on
we
the
go?
seeker?
Should we go through this? Should we go through this?
We
Usually do.
we would have to between now and the next meeting, yeah.
What are you asking, Nancy? If you have
Should we
to,
go through this at this meeting?
You can go through it. I've gone through it, and he's answered the questions that I asked. When we do
I mean,
a
it's going in the mail.
determination,
It's going in the mail tomorrow, right?
No, just to circulate for lead
just for
agency.
circulation
Oh,
for
okay.
lead agency, this is, you're not making any
We're
determination.
not, no determination, just
Okay,
as our intent to be lead agency.
right.
And that would be circulated, and then within 10 days, we get a response.
30 days.
30 days.
30 days.
Sorry. Mine's slipping.
It's okay.
Okay.
10 days is
30
public
days, you're
hearings.
30 days.
I make a motion that we declare intent to be lead agency on this project. Under
Is there a
seeker.
second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, unanimous. Okay, now, that 30-day, the next item on the agenda is to decide whether or not we want to schedule a public hearing for our next meeting.
So,
Given that the 30-day, timeframe, we couldn't close the public hearing, so do we want to do it in April or we want to schedule it now for May?
well, I would agree that we're not ready to schedule the public hearing now, even if it wasn't for that time period. We don't have enough detail on this site plan in order to have a meaningful review by the public. I think that there's a number of items that need to be addressed, both on the parking side and the stormwater side, and the site planning elements that I think are critical in order to be addressed before we open any public hearing. I think if we scheduled it for May, that would give the applicant, some 6 weeks or so, sufficient time to get to the point of that, the plans being ready. Our office, I've already spoken to Kevin, our office is prepared to meet with him, to go over the comments, to help get him to that point as soon as possible. So I think the appropriate thing would be to set the public hearing for May.
Or should we do that in the April meeting?
I think at the April meeting.
It's the choice of the board. If the board wants to,
I'd rather-
remove this from the agenda in April, you can make that move tonight on that, or
Just in case something else
Pops up.
develops.
I would be fine with that.
I'll keep my options open.
My only objection would have been to setting the public hearing. From that point, it's at the pleasure of the board.
The other thing that I should mention is I got a call this evening from the building inspector, Tom Tuma, who was meeting with the fire group, prevention bureau, I guess. The fire bureau. They were reviewing it and they will be sending a comment letter.
Good.
Okay, so
So we'll set the public hearing at the April meeting.
we'll carry this over till the April meeting and then set up a hearing at that time if
Yeah.
it's appropriate.
Yes, I think it's
Exactly.
appropriate. I'd like to hear what the fire bureau has to say.
Well, and hopefully by that point, the plans will be ready. I mean, we should be able to get
And
that.
no late submissions, please. Okay? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Town Center at Somers. Extension of the sewer water district. We're gonna have an application, applicant is going to make a presentation. And then we have reports of the planner and the consulting engineer. Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Zach Mintz. I'm an attorney with the law firm Zarin and Steinmetz, here tonight on behalf of First Stop Biddle, joined by Rob Aiello and Rich Cardone of JMC. Also joined by.
Can you speak into the microphone, please?
Sure. Apologies. Let me know if it's too loud. All right. Also joined by Andy Albrecht, Greg Bedell, and Stefan Rapallo over Stop Biddle. We're here tonight with regards to their petition to extend the Heritage Hills Special Sewer District. You might recall that this application or this applicant was before you back in 2017. They were in front of you for changes that were being made to the town center shopping center. Around that same time, the Somers Crossing petitioned for an extension of the sewer district, and this board expressed a desire for the town center to join that sewer district. So back in 2017, it was made a condition of approval that we come back here for this application, and we are here tonight in the process of trying to satisfy that condition of site plan approval. Just as a little bit of additional procedural background, We have already made our petition regarding the extension to sewer district to the town board. We first appeared in front of the town board in February. In February, the town board accepted our petition and declared its intent to serve as lead agency under SECRA. We were also in front of the town board again last week. At that point, they closed the public hearing on that petition. There was no comment. They indicated that we could come here as well to have the planning board review the actual changes to the site plan concurrently. So I want to turn it over to Rob Aiello. He can take you through the plans. Tonight, all we are really asking for is that the board set the public hearing at an upcoming agenda, at next month's agenda for the site plan. The town board obviously is serving as lead agency under SECRA, so this public hearing would just be for the changes to the site plan. So at this point, I'll turn it over to Rob.
Would you please speak loud? I'm a little hard of hearing.
Certainly. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Rob Aiello with the firm of JMC, and we're the civil engineers for the project. As Zach mentioned, we were before your board in 2017, and as a requirement of the site plan, and also based on a desire by the applicant to take away their septic systems and hook up to the sewer, we're here before you requesting site plan approval for the improvements associated with the sewer connection. Specifically, there are several permits listed that we require: a special use permit for activity within a groundwater protection overlay district, the actual site plan approval for the site improvements, an erosion control permit under Chapter 93, an environmental permit under Chapter 167, the wetland and watercourse protection. We'll also require approvals from the health department, from the DEC, both for wetlands and speedies permit, and a stormwater pollution prevention plan from the DEP because we're in a Main Street area. To take you through an overview of the improvements, this is a plan that was actually provided to the board in 2017, and it showed the conceptual design at the time, and it also showed how the site is currently served by the existing septic systems. So the building's in orange, just to orient you, this is the center area where the parking was reconstructed. The Chico's, Somers Road, and Somerstown Road here, and the CVS is, here. So everything in orange, these buildings in orange, the majority of the existing buildings are served by an existing septic system located along Route 100. The professional building in purple is served by a septic system here. The CVS is served in green by the septic system under the parking lot here. This area with the post office is served by a third septic area here, actually fourth, and the gym space and some of the restaurant space is served by a fifth septic system here. So we're using some of the infrastructure, or at least some of the locations. Specifically, we're converting this area. I'll go to the, I'll keep on the conceptual plan because it shows where the areas are going. So everything in the orange is going to be going to a new pump station. We're going to upgrade the existing pump facility behind Burke. Yes, ma'am?
No, I was just following what you're
Yes.
saying. Sorry.
Yeah, so we're going to do a new pump station here, and there'll be a force main going towards the Chico's. There'll be a lift station here, serving the professional building, also going towards an existing manhole on the Chico's property through an easement that we have with them, and a third pump station located here, which will serve the CVS building, the post office space, and the gym space on the lower level. So all three of these will pump through force mains to a gravity main located here on the Chico's property. In terms of the wetland permits that we require, I'll show you where those regulated areas are. There is a DEC wetland located on the adjacent property, and this is the wetland, and the 100-foot buffer encroaches onto our property in the southwest corner. So piping, and one of the lift stations and a generator will be within the buffer area. So that requires both a wetland permit under your ordinance as well as with the DEC. Now, I mentioned the generator.
Yeah.
Our original submission showed a generator located in this location here. We have updated the drawings and we'll be resubmitting them to the town planner and to the town engineer and to your board over the next few weeks. But we did relocate that generator based on comments from the town planner to get it away from the condominiums. We have added a second generator here in this location in the northeast corner. So this is the parking lot and the
Right.
one-way area behind the bank, which comes out going towards the professional building. So we've added a second generator here, and this generator will serve both the professional building and this pump station behind Burke. So that is a new addition to the plan that you'll see reflected. There was a question regarding the type of fuel or the fuel source for the generators, and we've been working with Erstat Biddle, and we've confirmed that those will be propane generators and not diesel. So we will have tanks located adjacent to each generator. One here and one here.
These generators are for electric service as well as the pumps?
They are for specifically the pump stations.
Pump station.
Just the pumps?
Right, to provide emergency power in the event of an outage so that the, so sewage can still be pumped off the
Does
property.
not include any of the retail establishments?
That's correct. These are only for the pumps.
Okay, you have 3 pump stations and 2 generators.
Correct.
So one generator is taking care of the 2 pump stations on the side and the
Correct.
one up,
This one's here, this one here,
the one
near the cell tower,
Near
or
the
now
cell
near
tower.
the cell tower.
Yeah.
Is taking care of the pump station here, which will be in the parking lot near the gym space. There was also a comment from the town planner about providing a hydraulic report. We've been working with GZA because we're in the groundwater protection overlay, and they provided a similar report for the application in 2017, and we will be providing that to you in our next submission. But we did speak with them today and went over the facts of the case and explained that although we will be taking less water, we're putting less water into the ground to recharge the aquifer on the site, when it gets pumped to the sewage treatment plant and is discharged from the plant, it will be still going into the same general aquifer, but of course it will be treated as opposed to sewage going into the ground and being treated in the on-site septic system. So we would expect a net benefit. And that report will be coming to you hopefully in the next 2 weeks.
Joe, when we were discussing the parking element of the renovations that went on recently, I was out at the last meeting where it was finally approved in June, and at one point there had been discussion of the alternate route through being the back drive that goes in back of the post office and sort of along the CVS, the back top part of the property, sort of parallel to the Fireman's Field, and the discussion of, would they remove the no through traffic sign? Did that ever happen?
Yeah, that area is now one way. It's striped for that. It's got the arrows. We had a little bit of a challenge in the beginning of folks, what they say, it's hard to break old tricks or whatever. But
Yes.
as somebody who uses that gym, I understand that. But no, everything is in place. Everything we talked about, it says, the through traffic is allowed. It's the signage is as approved. The one-way traffic is there and it's striped.
So both areas that would receive a pump station and a generator, both behind Burke and there, are along adjacent to one-way striped roads.
Yes.
So we're not having two-way traffic
Correct.
right next to the generator and
Correct,
pump
except
station.
the only one I would be, because I'm looking at this detail, that one is yes, but the pump station, are you talking the generator or the pump station?
I was actually, I guess it's a
Because
generator.
I would be
It's a
thinking about the one
generator
down by the gym.
Yeah, by the gym it's both, and then it's just a pump station outside of
Right, because
Burke.
once you get through that once you get out of that one way, there is some circulation that is unrestricted in both directions.
Kind of
once you
actually
get
around the cell tower area.
Yeah,
And
around
by
the
the
cell
cell tower
Around
area.
the cell tower,
Okay.
Right.
definitely.
So that will be two-way traffic. I don't think that we're talking about putting anything in that one-way travel lane behind the back. I think it's once we break, no, the other side, on the other one, right?
Over here?
Once we come out of that one way, that's, because I know the low point is right there by, I assume you're gonna put that pump station right in the low point, right by the gym, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, the one-way aisle ends here,
Right.
and the pump station is here in the parking spaces.
Okay.
And this is actually an existing pump station, which will be upgraded to current standards. Right now, this pump station pumps to the septic
In
system
the front.
along Route 100, and it's going to be modified and now pump sewage over to the sewer on the Chicos.
So then too, you'll have to adjust the parking count and do a new parking map if you're taking up parking spaces, right?
No, actually, we're not taking up parking spaces because this will be an
Travel.
underground
Yeah.
pump station
Oh,
with
okay.
manholes.
Travel
It's
way.
underground. Okay. All
But
right.
it's in the parking space, but it won't eliminate the parking space. You can park on top of it.
Okay.
So
great.
Rob, those propane tanks, they above ground or below ground?
You know, we were talking about that. It's probably going to be below ground.
So if it's gonna be below ground, I mean, that is a,
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh.
I had that wrong. We
Okay.
prefer to put them above ground if
Well,
possible.
above ground will be, so we'll have to take a look at the visual, right? Below ground, we have to make sure that, you know, it is in the groundwater district. There are certain restrictions. Propane it may meet the definition of the restriction, but not the intent, right? So,
Mhm.
so I know we permitted propane at the Chicos under certain conditions, and both for your purposes, if you go in that direction, it's to make sure. And in this instance, I think it's important to raise this is to make sure that if there was a leak in that tank, which we know there are many restrictions that would prevent that from happening, but in the event it did, I want to make sure that we wouldn't have some kind of an impervious surface that would basically push that gas laterally through the soil,
Okay.
right? That allows it to vent up, right? So we were focused on that, on the other, make sure that if it did leak, that there was plenty of exposure to the environment to get it up so that it wouldn't move laterally and create some unknown hazard or in any way come in contact with the groundwater. So that was basically, if you go underground, that's it. If you go above ground, I think you got to really look at the visual because there's a lot of traffic around these areas.
Sure. Yeah, our preference is above ground, but we have room in this location. We're looking at it today where we could do some screening. Similarly, we have opportunity here for screening and for protection with bollards and things like that.
Yeah, I was going to say
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
if you're coming out of a one way into a multiple with the traffic down there, I'd want to definitely.
And the other thing, just on the generators, just make sure we have a good handle on I don't know if you submitted any specs. I know I'd be curious on the noise elements.
Okay.
How, you know, what kind of noise we're going to hear from those and whether we need to look at any silencing elements based on their location.
Sure.
I mean, that one is
provide those.
close to the church, so.
Yeah, I assume they're going to be turning on automatically every so many days?
That's correct. They typically are exercised once a month.
I beg your pardon?
Once per month for about an hour.
Once a month?
They exercise once a month.
They exercise for about
Not
an
once
hour.
a week?
I don't know. I have to look into that. I don't know. I know they get
All the
exercise
ones in
on-
my neighborhood are once a week, that's why.
Yeah,
Oh,
now
really?
that you're
Yeah.
saying- I think it is once a week, but we'll
Okay.
we'll coordinate that with.
Once a month would be nice.
I just want to verify one thing, that the
Generators.
piping behind the Chicos is already established. You don't have to rip anything up there, correct?
We did put that in.
Right.
We pressure tested it. It'll have to be retested with the presence of the health department once we get to
He
that
said
point.
once a month, and I never heard of that. It's once a week usually. So they're gonna check
Kick on for a few minutes, just to keep the juice.
for 5 minutes. You run
So-
for 5 minutes.
Rob, are those? So you have two individual force mains going to the Chico pump station? Three, but one from each pump station. You're not combining in any way. just
That's
using one
correct.
of them. So you
We
got-
ran 3 separate mains, and 3 separate mains go into the manhole.
Just out of curiosity, is there a reason for that? Is that because maybe each there's responsibilities of maintenance program through the site, or is it?
No, we just didn't want them competing against each other and dealing with check valves and
Okay.
things that go along with that.
It was more of an engineering consideration than some legal.
Than a practical consideration, correct.
That's all I have. And then I've got some stormwater stuff that we can deal with. And, you know, to me, it's screening make sure that any impervious surfaces that we add, we gotta just take a look at.
Sure.
And, this is not anything new, and I think it's a good thing.
Yeah, we have our meeting scheduled for a week from today. We spoke with Avara today.
I won't be there, but I'll
Yes,
take
yes.
care of you.
Okay.
I'm afraid I'm scared.
So I think I hit all the key points. Oh, and obviously, we've seen many different memorandum from DEP, from the health department, indicating that because there's a current consent order with the plant, that we certainly cannot connect or construct before that is addressed, or we'd have to figure out what the time, if we can't be approved, or if we can't commence construction, or things of that nature. When we get to the point, hopefully, of a resolution, we can work through that. We're obviously not going to do the work and look to connect before those issues with the plant are resolved.
I'm glad you brought that up. What
Yes.
the hell's going on?
I don't know. We figure once the Chico's open, we'll be good to go.
Yes, it will be.
But I don't know.
That's a moving target. Just so that the board knows, as I spoke to the town board, and I'm in the process of trying to kind of hear it directly from the respective horses' mouths. I'm trying to get in contact with the DEC, with the health department, and I've committed to get the board, a town board, part of their action on this, a summary of just what's going on.
Well, we got a summary thanks to their attorney. Did you see that?
I did. I want to verify that information.
Yeah, I got a variety of opinions, but
There's
no
so many
facts.
different stories out there, and it's a private.
But it's not the attorney's opinion. It came officially from the DEP. Perhaps you didn't.
Well, no, but the DEC
Is the key?
is
New
the
York
key.
State.
correct.
New York
It's
State.
the DEC permit that's
This-
in violation.
The Speedies.
Their Speedy's permit.
The Speedies permit.
Right.
Well, this document said there were 34 violations for the entire year of 2017 and 10 violations in the year 2018, and then a Ross spillage just recently.
Mhm.
And now they're issued this, whatever this legal document
Consent
is,
orders.
and they must do X, A, B, C, and D.
Yeah, it's unfortunate.
I'm
that
not.
this is all
I'm not
happening.
so much distressed at all these bad things I'm being told about. What I'm distressed at is why didn't this all come to a head a year ago?
I will offer you my perspective on that, which is, if you recall, during the approval process of the Somers Crossing project, where this matter of the connection was part of that deliberations, we were discussing that that the board that no actions would be taken on that application of approval until after the Heritage Hills treatment plant was upgraded. I don't have the exact minutes on this, but my recollection is that the applicant therefore argued that the plant had a permit for 702,000 gallons per day, which is true. They are only accepting an average daily flow in the area of 300,000 gallons per day, leaving a remaining capacity of 400,000 gallons per day by permit, by right, which is correct. That was all true at the time.
Mhm.
And then we were talking about, yes, but we would like to have our easements. We would like, and if you recall, there was a discussion of this is a private to private. The applicant was arguing that it's a private to private matter because it's a private treatment plant and it's a private landowner and it's a private to private matter, and really the town had limited responsibility in that private to private matter. That was my recollection, and that's what carried the day. I know we as during the construction of this, I know I highlighted this to the engineer very early in the job, along with the sidewalks, which were also an important element of getting built before their CO. And at that point, I really have not been involved once we've been into construction.
I appreciate what you said, and the reason I appreciate it is because I've been looking up their laws on how they enforce sewer operations, and everything refers to what they must do when they have these violations. And of course, the code word is municipal violation, municipal sewer works. It never says private. But when you say private to private, a municipal, if that were a municipal, by law, they would have to notify the public among everybody else. We were never notified of any of
It's a
this.
privately owned, it's a
But
privately
because
owned.
they're private, they don't have to tell the world that they spilled raw sewage.
Correct.
That they violated their permit 34 times in the year 2017.
It's a very frustrating matter.
What about the English company that was supposed to run that plant?
Right now, that plant, the last I heard, is being, I think Delaware Engineering is the one that is running that plant right now. They're operating that plant, so I don't think it's.
They made a big announcement that an English firm took over the handling of the plant.
When was that?
About a year
About
ago.
a year ago.
About a year ago.
I
But
wasn't aware of
the original names as president and the original name of the company still exists the way we knew it. But I read the small print on the consent, and it said there shall be no sale of this sewer plant until all this is settled. So I'm beginning to wonder if the sale.
I haven't heard of anything to sell. I know the town is trying to lock up that capacity for our needs to sewer our lake communities, and we're in the process of securing the funding in order to do that. And we're going to need to make an arrangement with Heritage Hills in order to accomplish that in the end. Right now, we'll serve letters for portions of both Lincolndale and Shenorock to come over to this plant. But of course, it has to be upgraded, and that upgrade is accepted and those violations cleared. I think they should have that done by the time we build those sewers.
Well, that's very clear in the legal document. What's not clear is why we didn't know any of this for 2 1/3 years. We didn't have a clue.
I know that if we went through the meeting minutes, I'm sure we would find. I haven't done this. There was this conversation, and the argument from the applicant. It was a private-to-private matter, and the town's only responsibility was the extension of the sewer district. And given the capacity existed in the plant, the town had no basis for not permitting that to happen.
Well, in this instance, we're now prohibited from approving their application.
Right. Well,
Well,
now that there's a
we were not
consent order, right?
prohibited.
Now that there's a consent order, it's a little different because now they don't have a valid permit.
Yeah.
They have a tainted permit.
I don't mean to sound like I'm arguing with you. It's just I'm puzzled why we were left out of the loop for 2.5 years, or 2 1/3 years.
And we would, of course, be open to a condition which would say we can't do our construction until such time as that's resolved.
Yeah, I mean, I would think that we could. I would ask maybe Joe to think about this, but I would think that this board can proceed, and any resolution of approval would make
Subject.
contingent building. I mean, they can't pull a building permit until that consent order is cleared and they have some acknowledgement from the DEC that they're permitted. And I would be supportive of that.
And chances are the health department might withhold our approval until that's cleared also, or have a similar condition. So, because we have to go for their approval also.
Do you think they'll be ready to open a public hearing for next week? Yeah, I think so.
I don't know. We'll have to.
I think you have to be careful about that. I
Yeah.
think you have to be careful about connecting to anything at this point. I know. I'm not saying send flow. I'm just saying even the connection, I know was an issue with the Chico's project. Just the fact that it was connected, even though there was no water flowing through it.
I don't even want to connect it, I just want to disrupt.
Oh.
You know, get to a point where there's some kind of approval of the plan so that you can move forward with everything involved in the construction of it, but there's just no connection.
I'll talk to the attorney about that. I can tell you that similar to Nancy, I'm a little frustrated with the position we're in, given the existing construction that has gone on, and you know, I live in this town and I walk around and I probably ask every day what's going on with the Chicos. You know, so if we were to do it again, I want to relook at on how we do this to make sure that we don't wind up with another situation where you've invested a bunch of money now and the plant isn't ready, right? And
Well, our operation isn't contingent upon the completion of connection of these improvements.
well, they may be though, right? Because you know, as I don't know how you're going to modify that pump station to go in one direction while still allowing it to go to the other. I mean, you have to decommission it in order to be ready to commission the new, right?
We are actively, pricing or value engineering whether it would be worth it to simply build a new one next to it
Okay.
log in.
So what I'll do is I'll talk to Joe about that and maybe by inform Alvaro for your meeting next week.
I think it'd be at least helpful if we could leave it open for discussion.
Okay.
And be sure to thank Jody Cross for
Thank you for
forwarding
coming.
that document to us.
Gentlemen, thank you for coming.
So with that, we're hoping that the board sees fit to schedule the public hearing for April 10th on these matters.
Is this ready for public hearing?
Yes, we're both supportive of scheduling
Yes.
the public hearing.
Good.
Okay. Motion?
Motion to set the public hearing to review the change in the site plan, to support the addition of the pump stations and the generators under seeker.
And expanded.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All in favor? Discussion.
Does it have to include? Nancy's asking a question, does it have to include the expansion of the, that the public hearing includes the expansion?
Of the of the sewer district.
Okay, so let me rephrase my, what I'm saying. Motion to set the public hearing for the change to the site plan in relation to the petition for the extension of the Heritage Hills Sewer District, construction of the pump stations and the generators, underground or above ground, however they turn out to be. Does that cover it all?
And I would say, in connection to the Heritage Hills sewage treatment plant.
And connection to the Heritage Hills Sewer Treatment Plant. That's my motion.
Nancy?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Unanimous.
Thank you very much. Saret, do we do the mailings or does the town? I don't recall.
For
For the public hearing, the notices.
Barbara, you need to supply us stamped envelopes. Addressed, yes,
Okay,
with no return address on them.
okay. All right, we'll give you a call.
No return address, just we'll stamp it in the office.
Understood. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Next item. New singular wireless, Somers Commons.
Oh, yeah.
The cell tower.
Not that tall, in case we couldn't tell. Good evening. For the record, my name is Taylor Palmer with the law firm of Cuddy and Fader on behalf of the applicant, AT&T. The owner of the tower is Crown Castle. Normally, I'd say I'm joined by my engineer, but unfortunately he wasn't able to join me, so I'll put my hat on and I'll play attorney and engineer for this evening. We're before this board this evening in connection with AT&T's proposed eligible facilities request for the existing concealment monopole, which is located at the Somers Commons site. The height of the existing tower is 120 feet, and the AT&T replacement upgrades are internal to the monopole itself and to the the existing storage area. Just by way of background, this is located on the southeast side of the property, so it's behind the loading area for Goodwill. This is located in the community shopping district. As noted in our construction drawings, the scope of the work involves existing canisters that are mounted inside the unipole. They'll be a little bit larger to allow room for new antennas. We are replacing 3 of the existing antennas inside the monopole, and then we're replacing 6 diplexers and some additional radio heads in the equipment shelter. The tower was analyzed pursuant to TIA 222H standards and the Uniform Code. And the tower structure was also analyzed at 115 miles an hour for a 3-second wind speed. And the structure itself is at about 53.3% capacity and meets the minimum code requirements for the proposed installations. It's respectfully submitted the proposed upgrade also complies with the town code sections 170, 129, 9B, and 170, 129, 6F of the town code, which authorizes this board to consider waiving the site plan, public hearings, and the special permit review in connection with this minor modifications. Pursuant to the comments that we received from the town planner, with respect to the application before this board. We have been in connection with the owner of the tower, Crown Castle, in connection with their renewal of the tower. And we would ask that this board consider, assuming I'm certainly here to respond to any questions that you may have, but the board may also consider conditioning any approval similar to a recent upgrade at 243 Route 100. There was Resolution 2016 of 04 that there be I'll read the exact language, but that there be a personal structural safety inspection of the facility by a qualified engineer, and it just relates to the comments in the planner's comment memorandum.
I need the attorney to repeat that. However, it raises the issue that came up at the last meeting, which has been verified by the town attorney, if you recall. It came up whether in addressing the applications by some of the providers, AT&T, Sprint, Verizon, that they exist on poles. So it's not just a question of the 5-year renewal issue for whatever the request by those providers may be, whether it's an upgrade or a new co-locator. It's whether or not the pole on which they exist has also been renewed in the last 5 years. And the answer to that question from the town attorney was that yes, both the pole and the provider have to be in compliance with a 5-year renewal. So in this case, and that's why I'm going to ask the attorney to repeat this, it appeared, at least to me, based on my review of the poll, that they were in need of a 5-year renewal, that renewal of the poll had expired. So, and I'm trying to see here because in each one of them, we have 3 tonight. There are slightly different nuances in each one we're dealing with tonight. So I have to read each one to remember what the relationship of the poll to the provider is. For the upgraded AT&T constitutes its own renewal. There's been no separate renewal application, which would require. Okay, so though we had reports, there was the requirement always for the renewal is the on-site inspection. And we often get the report related to the condition based on a computer modeling approach. And the computer modeling approach does not meet the standard required in the zoning, which says on-site. So we need both. We always need the report, and then we need the on-site. So, would the attorney like to state?
Please, thank you, and I appreciate the clarification for both myself and for the members of the board. The applicant has submitted a structural certification indicating that the upgrade, the tower would be more than capable for the upgrade. But as the planner mentioned, the code does have a specific requirement about the tower owner being able to provide an on-site inspection. In that instance, in past instances where Crown Castle is an owner and the co-locators Verizon, AT&T, and Sprint, depending on which provider comes in to either upgrade its individual facilities, there has been an opportunity, or there has been prior conditions to the approval that on-site inspection take place. And I will read this specific. This is only one instance. The board can certainly modify this language, but from a prior resolution.
Are you saying that the on-site inspection took place within the 5-year period?
He's asking for a contingent.
We're asking for a condition of the approval that would allow 4 months in order for that to take place. Because it hasn't, to the best of our knowledge, we've reached out to Crown Castle. We have not had a direct.
Can I speak to this?
Are you Crown Castle?
I represent T-Mobile and Crown Castle actually on this site for the special permit renewal. So this site is actually owned by T-Mobile. Crown Castle is the manager of the facility. So T-Mobile is in the process of filing a special permit renewal. Its special permit is due to be expired at the end of this month, I believe, at that site. So we are in the process of working with them. Hopefully you'll have that renewal in the next week or so. So there will be an on-site inspection as part of that renewal. So as a representative.
David Kenny,
with the attorney for Snyder & Snyder, representative of Crown Castle and T-Mobile. Again, just for the board's record, there will be a special permit renewal for the tower owner at this facility, which will include an on-site inspection. So I just provide that information to the board that there will be an application to renew the special permit at this facility filed very shortly.
You say, you said Crown Castle's the manager of this facility, or this?
Correct. So the way that it works is
And they're the ones that receive the revenue from the provider?
So the way it works is T-Mobile is the owner of this facility, but through a contract, Crown Castle is enacting as the manager of the facility. So it's a sub-company of T-Mobile that owns the facility, so they're the holders of the special permit. Crown Castle, just as a subcontract from T-Mobile, manages the site so that it can equally manage it for all of the carriers. But the ownership of this, and it'll be explained in the special permit renewal, the special permit was originally issued to T-Mobile, and T-Mobile owns the tower.
So T-Mobile is the one that's collecting the revenue for the tower.
I believe the management of the company, Crown Castle, correct, but it's I don't want to hide it. It's there's
Follow the money.
correct.
If we cut the stream of money off, they'll be motivated to get their act together.
I'm explaining that their permit has not expired yet, and that application is coming.
Right, so just keep in mind, that's the application coming, that's not an approval. Part of me is saying, we need to make these end dates coincident, right? So
Yes.
that they both
Yes.
expire at the same time, and
Yes.
ideally, I'd like to see everything expire at the same time, and everybody come in.
At the
So
same time.
I find, you know, there may be ways we can do things on contingency, but I just think it's generally bad practice for us to allow a new approval on something that's out of compliance. Right, so right now the tower itself is nearing out of compliance. In another
Right.
month, they'll be so they will be out of compliance. But at least I appreciate them being timely enough to get their application before they expire, unlike some other applications we do.
Do we have software that can particularize these and send them a 6-month notice?
I don't think it's our responsibility.
It's not our responsibility.
No, not our responsibility.
I would also point out that there is also annual certifications that come with these facilities, and an annual certification for this exact site was recently filed with the town. So the applicant and the owner of the facility is working to make sure that all of the information is up to date with the town.
Yeah, I think just by virtue of co-location, I don't know that you could ever sync it all up because you're gonna have antennas entering the tower at different years after it's built. And I don't think you'd wanna burden a company that joins the tower later with a shorter period before a renewal. So I think there is a certain amount of stagger if you have multiple corporate entities entering to the tower.
Yeah, I totally agree. I'm just was stating what I think would be the easiest for the town.
Yeah.
And I would have suggested they just get shorter time periods as you get closer to that 5 years, right?
I mean, I think I thought I read Surratt's memo to say that they were actually out of compliance already, in which case I would say that if it's a 5-year renewal, you subtract the amount of months that they're out of compliance, and you don't get the full 5, you get 5 minus the amount of time you're out. I would just like to say on a positive note that the engineering report for this, because I was having I was revisiting in my memory that on the prior time we were had this issue recently when we looked at the engineering, it wasn't clear that the engineer had a New York State.
Yes.
And I can see here that although the Paul J. Ford Company is based in Ohio and has, we've got a New York engineer,
Right.
Brian Kermode, stamp on the document. So I would just like to say thank you,
Indeed.
because we need to see that. And we
Yeah.
didn't
And
have
the
that.
last thing that I haven't checked, but you can just as easily as I, is to make sure that company is therefore registered to practice engineering in the state of New York. Now, I've received clarification. You may recall this was an issue last time, right?
Yes,
Where it was a
yes.
New York PE, but for a company that was not licensed to practice and authorized to practice in the state, if you remember.
So we still have to look for Ford.
We still got to make
make
sure the company is authorized if they're going to solely rely on this report. However, if there's going to be an on-site inspection, this is the clarification I got from the state, which is if there is going to be an on-site inspection from a New York PE from a firm that is qualified to perform in the state of New York, and he adopts the recommendations, he can do that through that would be permittable. So it can't be, hey, I just went out to the site and I looked and it looked fine to me. It's got to be, I looked fine to me, I read the report, and everything is going to be safe, basically.
And I can adopt the
Correct.
report of someone who's
So
not
basically, the engineer that's going to wind up signing the on-site work is going to take responsibility for the conclusions of the structural report. And
So-
in that fashion, we can accept all.
So whoever's signing off on it needs to give an affirmative statement that they've got New York State licensure to do that. And
Yeah.
that's what they
Well, they would just have to say that we've reviewed the report, we concur with its conclusions, and we've done an on-site inspection that demonstrate that the conditions analyzed are those that exist on site. Something to that effect is what we'd be looking for.
I have a very good condition that was written by this very board that might do a lot to this this conversation. I'm happy to read in that, at least that condition, if the board, just for its consideration in connection with our request, that I consider the opportunity, of course, as council has confirmed, the existing it is currently in compliance. However, they will be updating and doing the on-site inspection. So we would ask that the board consider conditioning it on that, and then at that point, the applicant would submit supplementally to, or provide a copy of that to the board in connection with this application, so that it be on file. And just for the purpose of the record, the condition language that I'm referring to from a prior, from a 2016 resolution says, in accordance with section 129.6G, which is the same section referenced in the planner's comment
Read
Um,
memorandum.
more slowly.
You got it. In accordance with section 129.6G of the Code of the Town of Somers, a personal structural safety inspection of the wireless telecommunications facility by an engineer specializing in structural engineering, certifying that the facility is structurally safe, shall take place within 4 months of the date of this approval, and such report shall be submitted to the planning board.
Yeah, I would probably modify that a little bit now and just connect it to they can get out of this off of our agenda, but they can't pull a building permit until after that report is submitted. I wouldn't leave it to, hey, go ahead and we'll keep track of whether you give us that in 4 months. I think that we're seeing that most of the time those are not happening. So
We appreciate that, and we've expressed that urgency to, again, the management entity, Crown Castle. So we will certainly follow up, but we would be accepting of that condition. Exactly right.
And I think having that additional item as part of the condition, it gives the applicant the advantage of not having to come back to the board to wait on that to happen. But I do think it's important that it trigger them getting it done before they actually get the building permit.
Right.
Well, yeah, before they get the building permit.
Understood.
I have a question. And before I ask my question, I note that you're asking us to waive let's see, where is it? You're asking us,
It's on the second page, should be around the
what are you asking us to waive there?
second paragraph. Second
Okay.
paragraph.
Okay, I have no problem with that, providing. Okay, what I'm concerned about, it's a tight spot, and the last time changes were made there, quite a few years back, you added I think you call it an equipment room. It's a tight spot, and so there are, I believe, we call them 2 equipment rooms. And you're talking about adding, I don't know what it is you're adding to the equipment room, but the assumption is there's room for what it is you're adding?
Yes, so on the
There's
construction,
no room for another equipment room.
indeed, we're not, so this is an existing facility on it, so we're not co-locating, it's an existing, so
Okay.
currently I can go explicitly into what they are, and I can certainly.
Well, you
pull-
mentioned that, it's meaningless to me, but it's your business, so I don't have
Correct,
to
we're not, there's
understand
no,
that part.
we're not increasing the size of the equipment shelter, it's internal to the existing equipment shelter and internal to the existing monopole.
Okay. That was my only concern.
So the board has to make a determination and motions related to waiving public hearing and further site plan review. And then you have to make a determination regarding type 2 secret. I will say one thing both to the board and the applicant. My office is really backed up now. So for this applicant and the two others, if by approving this tonight with conditions, they think they're going to get a resolution immediately, they will not. It will take at least several weeks till they get a resolution. So I'm putting that on the record.
Wow.
What's your opinion on waiving the public hearing?
I have no problem waiving the public hearing.
I agree.
Okay, waive the public hearing?
Wait,
Waive it. Motion to waive the public hearing,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. Determination of type 2 action under seeker. What further action under seeker is required?
Simply, you have to make a determination that this is a type 2 action under secret.
Okay.
So moved.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Unanimous. And the last item is these
Direct
approvals
me
will
to-
come together and
I think it's just directing.
Direct me to do a resolution
resolution
for
for our
chairman's
next
signature
meeting.
with conditions as
With
discussed.
conditions for our next meeting, or the chair's signature. What do you ask? What do you suggest?
Uh,
I don't think this board needs to see this again as long as we take care
No,
of
I
this
don't want
record.
to see it again.
I think it would be for chairman's signature.
Chairman's signature.
Okay. And that's going to take a couple of weeks. Could I ask a question? Is it okay? Off the record, you don't have to put it in the minutes. I have an A&T cell phone. And when I shop up there, when I'm at milk, the phone works. But when I buy potatoes, it doesn't work. Get it? So I'm expecting full coverage.
And you're wearing that
I'll
engineering
report-
hat, Taylor.
I'll put my engineering hat on. I will say that it is, of course, to enhance coverage, and so hopefully you'll have one more bar at the potato area. That's what it is. All right.
All right, you good?
Thank you very much for your time this evening, and I do apologize for the speed. Next time I see you guys, I will slow it down. Just trying to get you out of here.
Thank
And
you.
the last item on your agenda is Sprint PCS co-location.
This
Uh,
one is the,
This is where is this?
I think it's a motto.
This 100? Yeah, this is the,
This is another cell
Amato,
tower.
Amato Tower.
This is a motto, right?
Oh, this is the
Correct.
motto.
This is a motto.
This is the farm tower.
Yeah.
Correct.
That's the daughter so fond of Cobra What you call the body? You were here. Just keep moving.
Good evening, Board. My name is David Kenny. I'm an attorney with Snyder & Snyder. I'm here tonight representing the applicant Sprint for its co-location on the Amato Tower at 121 Route 100. This is an existing 139-foot monopine. Sprint will be co-locating 6 antennas and 6 RRUs at the 117-foot elevation mark. The antennas will be within the faux branches, will be painted to match. There will also be concealments attached to the outside of the antennas to help blend it in with the faux branches and continue the existing stealth design. This application, as I'm sure you're aware, is an eligible facilities request in connection with federal law. This application, by being a co-location application and being within the confines of the federal law, no substantial change to the tower, no increase in the height, and there's no excavation or deployment of equipment outside of the fenced-in compound. This facility should be approved as of right, in accordance with the federal law. So tonight we've asked for a waiver of the public hearing, a waiver of the site plan process, and here tonight really just to present the application to the board and answer any questions it may have.
You're not planning any backup power unit for your,
Not at this time.
Because he's not the tower owner, right? You're
Not on this one.
you're not
On
the
this
tower.
one, I'm only representing Sprint tonight.
See, I think what we're trying to do in ultimately is when the tower owners come in for their renewals, we want them to be able to provide emergency power for everybody on the tower. Otherwise, we're gonna wind up with 5 generators. You know, and whoever if every co-located facility, that doesn't make sense. We need 1 generator, but that should be on the tower owner, not on the.
Correct, and you will see more generators coming with telecommunications applications because the FCC had a regulation that requires now, as of February 2019, for all the carriers to provide at least 24 hours of backup power at the site in case there is a hurricane like Sandy that causes widespread blackouts. Essentially, it's an emergency services provider, but that doesn't involve this application.
Okay, and for the record, when is the most recent date of renewal of this tower's permit?
This summer, yes. No, it's in here. It's probably in my book.
Surratt?
Yeah.
For the record, what's the current status of the renewal of the tower itself?
Right, now I'm going to state it, and I just want to put Joe Ariel on notice
Okay.
to follow this along, because I am not clear on what we have to do on this one. That the tower pole itself, go to the structural report, Joe, on my page 3. Okay.
For the
So,
purpose of, yeah.
This applicant did provide a structural analysis report prepared by Bennett and Pless, and that one was dated April 9th, 2018 for this monopole. And was stamped by an engineer licensed in the state of New York, Joe. And this was based on, as I said, a software determination. In previous reviews for a facility renewal, we noticed all of this other. But as part of a prior application, which was at the last planning board meeting for Verizon, it was on the same pole. Remember, we had an Amato application at the last meeting. And this issue again was raised there. What was the status of the renewal 5 years of the pole? As part of that application, there was a separate structural analysis based on a personal inspection. And in a letter of December 3rd, 2018, from Structural Consulting Services, they indicated they made an on-site review November 29th, 2018, which of course would be within the 5-year period for this applicant. They said that their inspection at the time matched the antenna loading based on the most recent structural analysis of Bennett and Pless, which has a different date. That's why I'm pointing this out. They're talking about the April 9th, 2018 Bennett and Pless report, but the other application had a Bennett and Pless report of July 18th, 2018, which deemed the existing monopole to have sufficient capacity just for, at that time, the proposed Verizon. So now we have what appears to be an earlier Bennett and Pless report for this applicant and a later one just for the Verizon. So it's a little, there doesn't appear to be one that has taken both into account, even though there has been an on-site. So, where does that leave us? Does anybody like to comment on that?
Well, I would just say this, right, which is the July report presumably included the new Verizon equipment, where the April report that you're relying on probably predated that, right? So I would imagine that your analysis should be based on the July, the most recent being the July, plus your equipment, right?
Understood. I believe that can be done. Again, it's the same engineer firm that did both reports, so they had the same information. I don't have the engineer, but I can obviously provide confirmation that the information will have, that the report will be provided that will have the most up-to-date information.
Right.
That will show it to have sufficient capacity. Obviously, we cannot build if there's not sufficient capacity.
Right, and what I would do is just, let's make that crystal clear in the write-up, right, that says it includes, for your application, it addresses not only what's there, but what's been approved
What's
to be
been
there.
approved
Or
by this
proposed or approved since then.
Absolutely.
But it has the two proposals, Verizon and.
Well, but remember, he's not representing the tower owner on this, right?
No, just Sprint.
So he
the
just has to
co-locator.
basically take what was done for Verizon and then add his to it, right? I think that we should be contemplating not issuing any approvals on this until we get this is one that's expired, right? We don't have the tower is out of compliance on the special use on this one.
This one is expired.
It's actually expired. So I would think that we need to get that tower owner in here to get that special use permit up to date. Otherwise, we're issuing approvals for something that on a non-compliant facility, right? So I think it has to be brought into compliance before we can issue any approvals. I don't think this is one that we have the flexibility to go contingent on.
And up to date, all inclusive, then plus.
Yes, correct.
Well, may I make a statement though? There is federal law that's at
Yeah,
play
but
here.
there's also a town law that they're obligated to keep their special use permit up to date. Don't bring up the federal law.
And we wouldn't run afoul of the federal law if the pole was in compliance. So I understand it, like duly noted. I'm not worried about that if the pole's out of compliance. That's my legal opinion.
Yeah, why?
So-
I mean, don't you want to put your equipment? I mean, you represent. I don't know who owns this pole, but
Insight Towers owns the
I mean,
pole. I'm not saying we shouldn't provide the information. I'm just stating that there.
be up to date.
I'm just stating for the information of the board, there is a federal law that's at play here with a shot clock to review within 60 days. And the review before this board is limited to whether or not it meets the requirements in the federal law of substantial change, as is explained in the cover letter.
It's a non-compliant tower.
The federal law has.
You can't bolt stuff on the side of this building because you want to. You're not allowed to. It's not an approved for that.
It is impacted legally by the fact that it's federally regulated. That's true. But the federal law has made accommodations for certain kinds of review parameters by the boards. This would fall into them. I'm not worried about it. Get the thing in compliance, you get your approval. And by the way, if you do it within 60 days, we won't even have to talk about the federal law.
Right, you come to the next.
Again, I'm not stating that I'm standing in front of keeping this from being in compliance, just explaining the information.
But I think the pole owner is. I think that is what they're doing. And that's how we'll put it in a legal argument. So don't bring that up again, please. We got it. It's on the record.
So for the record, at what date did this tower come out of compliance for failure to renew?
Let's see, if I have that.
It ain't yesterday.
Wasn't this pole renewed during Verizon's application that was just recently approved?
They still. We haven't issued their resolution. They
We
don't.
haven't
Okay.
issued their resolution, they're still.
That was my understanding that was
They were
done during that
reviewed-
process.
They were reviewed, and we can review and talk, but I don't think you can get a resolution on this until after we have a resolution that the pole special use permit is up to date.
Now I'm just trying to get the information of what status may be in,
Right.
so I can get the information.
I actually would like to review that again because I did have a conversation with the attorney, I think from your firm, Snyder and Snyder.
Correct. Michael
Yes.
Sheridan
Right.
is representing
And
Verizon.
I think he is not understanding what the board required of him the last time. I think the only thing he felt that needed to be done was the verification of the New York State engineer.
Right, but we was
But-
also get the tower approved.
But we needed the tower, and I don't think he understood that. So you are in the same firm, and you're going to need the same pole. So
Understood.
you should get together.
And call Insight.
We will do that.
So do you have an exact date?
I don't.
Okay.
I mean, I would suggest on the site. Really, all we need ask for they just got to put some silt fence up, right? It's not a big deal from a site planning perspective. I think. So I think that we could say, hey, go ahead, authorize Surratt, go through the approvals as we go through, and authorize Surratt to prepare the resolution. I just think we can't vote on that until after the towers. Maybe we can vote on all of those in one night or something like that, right? But
Understood.
the towers got to come first.
Yes, safety.
I agree.
Towers got to come first. I mean, they've got to stay in compliance with town code.
Understood.
Okay.
So I think we got to run through the list just like we did on the last one, right? With the public hearing,
Yes.
Right.
type 2.
All of those items. So you have to make a determination of waiving the public hearing and the site plan, vote on that.
Okay. What's your feeling? Waive it?
Yes, shall we waive it?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
I will state one other, it was something in the RF compliance report that was a recommendation that indicated that they identify the type and location of signs. This was, so where will those be, or will you provide
Sure.
those on the next
The
plan?
report states that the signs are to be located at the access point. Those signs are likely already there for the other co-locators that also have equipment there. If they're not, they'll be added as part of this co-location. But likely those RF warning signs are already at the access point for the other co-locators that are at this facility.
Okay, I'll need you to
Confirm
identify
that,
that
correct.
in writing,
Absolutely.
or if they're not there, identify that they'll be put on the site plan.
Sure, absolutely. And it does state in the report that at the access point at the gate is where they're to be placed.
All right, so I'll make a motion that we waive site plan review per section 170-129-6 and section 129-9 of the Town of Somers Code, and also waive the public hearing.
I'll second it. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Unanimous. Okay, and you've already covered the RF compliance.
And we have to declare a type 2.
Declare type 2.
Yes.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. On-site inspection.
Well, this one we've
This is
already
the one-
discussed.
this is the
That's
one
what's-
we need one
We've
more
already
on.
discussed all of
They gotta
this.
clean up the
Please put that
report,
standard.
right, but we can start working on the resolution.
We'll bring it into compliance. We'll make sure to contact Insight and get this all cleared up.
And, yeah, and Bennett and Plus could write one more memo. It's all inclusive.
Yes. Well, Insight is the one that's in charge of hiring Bennett and Pless, so we'll make sure that they
Make sure
they get
they-
it right.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, our next meeting is
Well,
April.
you have invasive species that
Oh.
were
I was
forwarded to you again. If you go to, I
You were
think
hoping
that
that problem had been resolved?
Right. I don't know if you have anything you want to say on this, but the town board made some changes. You had already given your recommendation. They sent it back to the board again.
With recommendations?
No recommendations, they just sent some revised language, which was sent to all of you.
It was sent to us with revised language?
I think maybe to see whether they hit the mark on what.
They had gotten some
Comments.
comments from, at their public hearing, and.
Oh, those comments.
Those comments.
Oh, yes.
You know which comments.
Yes, now I know, now I know.
Reinventing the wheel.
So,
Okay, now I know what it is.
okay, you know where we are?
Now I know.
Okay, do you want to comment on that?
I'll comment on it.
Okay.
Originally, there was some, going back before the town board did what it did, at the end of the summer, we discussed invasive species and possibly adopting some kind of ordinance, and at that time, we took a position to go with the position of the state had positions on what to do about bamboo and other things, and why not go by what the state did. That was our position. Then we didn't meet. And then the town board went ahead and decided what they wanted to do, and they held a public hearing on an ordinance on how to deal with bamboo. And the ordinance they held a public hearing on, they copied from Fire Island, a village on Fire Island. And there was public comment and criticism of it from a former councilman, Devine, I believe it was. Maureen Devine was critical of it, and she suggested they not adopt that ordinance that was copied from Fire Island. I've forgotten the name of the village on Fire Island.
Saltaire, I think it was.
And she suggested they use the ordinance that already existed in Patterson. And that's all I know about the criticism. And I think we don't do, personally, my personal feeling is this is, the town board does, this is their responsibility, and they're hearing from another former council person. I think I would rather hear what they think. I haven't a clue what my councilmen think. I only know what an ex-councilman thinks. And I don't want to have and express an opinion anymore. I want to know, what does Garrity think? What does Morrissey think? And I don't have that, and I didn't hear it the first time either.
Okay, then,
And I'm comfortable at the moment.
I think,
And the legislation belongs to them. I
all right,
don't
the
feel-
board made its comments prior at several other meetings ago. And, you know, if it's your decision to just leave it at that, that's how we'll leave it.
Yeah, I think we asked questions about to avoid duplication. I think we asked questions in the vein of we didn't want to be duplicating efforts in terms of saying something that the state was already doing. But I agree with Nancy, this is a policy, we're not a policy-making
Right.
entity, and
I think the board has opined that, yeah, controlling invasive species is the right thing to do, right?
absolutely, but
How they do it is a legislative prerogative.
Yeah,
right,
yeah.
absolutely. I
Just
don't.
don't overregulate it.
Right. Don't
No.
overregulate it, and don't overfine them.
Look forward to hearing more.
Okay, our next meeting is April 10th. Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Good night.
What's the date?